Our 12 o'clock lunch and learn event is a collaborative discussion with Wisconsin Farmers Union representatives on how we can help local farmers. Okay, so this is a discussion point. So who wants to start? Unless you have a presentation, Julie.
I don't have a full-blown presentation. I do have a couple, pretty solid recommendations in mind, but
wonderful. Okay. Okay. Trying to get all this together. Okay. All right. Great. So where do we want to start? Julie, what are your thoughts on that and how we can help local farmers?
Yeah, well, there's some really quite specific recommendations to Dunn County that came from, I'm trying to put some pieces together here, but a couple years ago, we had Ken Meter, who's an agriculture economist, come and do like a landscape analysis of building a community food system for Dunn County. And I can drop in the YouTube link to that presentation in the chat box here. He was brought in by the Dunn County Farmers Union, and Ken is, he runs his own nonprofit, but it really focuses on building community food systems and what that can do for rural community rejuvenation. And so I got some of the figures that he gave from that presentation, and now I'm just trying to piece like some of those recommendations and facts together with some current events, and trying to like put together some possibilities for Dunn County. So in that presentation, it's like an hour-and-a-half presentation. Feel free to just watch it if you would like. He said that currently, when he gave the presentation, $129 million of food was actually purchased in Dunn County. And of that amount, 123 million was sourced outside the county. And so basically what that also means is that when people buy that food that's coming in from other places, it often also exits the county, right? So if like at Walmart, for example, those checks, you can ask local bankers, go straight to Arkansas, right? That's part of the resource extraction that is occurring right now in rural America, all over the place, right? So we're having money that might be generated locally, leaves the community and doesn't come back to support anything. And that is like the focus of what Ken is talking about in his presentation, is how do we keep that money, the people, the resources, all that goes with it keep it locally. And so for farmers, it's really, how do you buy seed locally? Can you spend on veterinarians locally? And with more and more consolidation in agriculture, not only are the resources leaving, but we're also not spending that money locally in key businesses, small businesses that would keep communities thriving. Right. And so if you look across Iowa, for example, that's what's happening, is that you're getting more and more consolidation in the agriculture sector, and it's stripping rural communities of their schools, their hospitals, their small businesses, their rural hospitals. I mean, it is like happening. And so that his the whole pitch that he gives here is that make ways locally so that people can buy local food and keep those resources in the community. And so, for example, in his presentation, he talks about how that the money that is currently coming through Dunn County, and you have a lot of it, actually, it's a growing community, and people are spending money, that if you had more of that kept in the county, you'd be better off. So if each Dunn County resident bought $5 of food from a local farmer each week, that's $5 a week, you would keep $12 million in the community.
Wow.
And in turn, those farmers would, of course, be buying things more locally as well and taking services locally. So I mean, that is actually a pretty small commitment. So some communities have launched, buy local campaigns, right? And done a lot of PR around this to support local family farms and that sort of thing. We're not talking here about like Pilgrim's Pride or JBS. We're talking about like, buying shares from a local farmer, right? And so anyway, or buying from Menominee Food Co-op's local foods section. So anyway, those are some suggestions. And the key thing that's occurring right now is there is a ton of money coming to counties through ARP, right? Through American Rescue Plan. And for Dunn County, you are slated to get $8.812 million. And what is happening, we're also discovering, is that people are not aware of this, and it's being kept in county committees, and in some cases being used to buy more police officer vehicles, or it's going in places that may not actually help build communities. I mean, maybe there are communities that really need a lot more expenditure in police enforcement, but our point from the Farmers Union is we need to build up rural economies and keep people thriving in those communities, right? And now the money could be used for like a buy local campaign. It could also buy solar panels for, you could put out the Dunn County, old Dunn County farm. It could be used to help provide tax incentives for people to put up solar. I mean, there's all these different kind of environmental, choices that can be made as well, and infrastructure choices. So it can be used for public health. It can be used for economic challenges. And that's only the beginning. If the infrastructure bill passes, there will be other money. And so coming to Dunn County for infrastructure. So my pitch to you all is Dunn County needs to be prepared to spend this money in ways that actually benefit taxpayers and keep the community thriving. And if you're not prepared for it, somebody at the table is going to be prepared for it. And they are going to spend that money maybe in ways that are really not helping ordinary people.
Julie, you said we need to be prepared to spend this money and then that money. Are you talking the infrastructure bill that is being kicked around?
There's the ARP, which is the money that's coming related to like the economic challenges around COVID. That's 8.812 million. That's already been okayed and should be, I'm not sure if it's in the hands of the counties yet, but I can share some resources with you about that money. And then if the infrastructure bill passes, that also is supposed to have a large chunk of change going for rural community infrastructure development. So there's two different packages.
Julie, are you talking the ARPA funds?
ARPA
the American
funds.
Rescue Plan? Okay.
Correct.
Is that 8.8 million?
Yes,
Dunn County?
Yes, just for Dunn County. I'll share the list with you. I mean, you can look up a list of all the counties in the nation and how much there's going to be getting.
So I didn't follow all you mentioned, you had a number of 129 million, and then you mentioned spending $5 a week puts 12 million back into Dunn. Is that 12 million a year?
And that's 12 million a year. And that is just purely, that has nothing to do with the infrastructure package or with the ARPA funds, except for that you could use that money as a catalyst to start a local foods campaign, right? Because it is related to public health and economic development. So if you needed money to help start people buying from each other in your community, you now have the resources to be able to launch something like that.
And is what you just were summarizing here, is that in the 1.5 hour video that you mentioned?
Yes, the economic facts of Dunn County and the producers, like the farmers in Dunn County, is in that YouTube video. And that was presented a couple years ago. And so the facts might not be totally accurate for right now, but they were accurate like 2 years ago.
Yeah, so the crux should still be there.
Absolutely, maybe worse, probably worse.
Yeah.
Does that make
Julie,
sense? I feel
could
like I
you,
just dumped a whole bunch of stuff on you, but
well, let's talk about, could we talk a little bit about process and who to go to? So the ARP funds are now in the executive committee or in the chair ledger in.
No,
the
one half was
county?
distributed
Who
in
do we go
July.
to for ideas?
One
One
half
half
of
was
those,
distributed in July.
yeah, one half, yeah.
And it was distributed to where? The towns?
The towns, yeah, everyone got their portion, one half of their portion in
It was
Wisconsin.
It was distributed where? So
What do you mean? Like we received it, our town received one half of the
well, what
funds
I'm
that were-
trying to think about is who do we go?
For the, you're breaking up, Kathy.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying, who do we go to? Is it the PRD committee? Is it the chair? Is it the administration committee? Saying that we need to be looking at this, we need to be working with consumers and tourism. I mean, so does every committee have a chunk of change? What's the structure of the distribution of that ARP funds right at this moment?
It just goes to the
Do
county.
we know?
No, we don't know. I mean, that would be up to, maybe Chase would know, but that would be up to the county if they're gonna say the PRD can, if it something qualifies. A lot of this might not qualify. I don't know. I mean, because like I said, we've done tons of research on this too, and there's all kinds of information sent out with the Treasury Department. A lot of the funds, yes, can be used to help businesses and stuff that lost a lot during the pandemic, which is great. The county or whoever gets the funds can also provide loans, low interest loans to businesses and stuff that, needs it in their towns and stuff like that. Infrastructure, that's kind of up in the air because the only infrastructure that they're talking about, some towns are saying, oh, maybe we can use it for roads and stuff. And we're not seeing that at all in the Treasury. All the information that the Treasury has sent out so far, but sewer and stuff like that. They were talking about broadband is a big thing with towns here. I'm not sure, not the county, but even broadband for farms. I mean, a lot of these new farmers need broadband. They have, yeah, and they have, they can use them in their tractors and whatever else that they have. Chase, I don't know if you know anything about the funds for the county.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm the best person to answer all those questions, but I do know that half of the funds that we're getting have been put towards the 2022 county budget, which is yet to be adopted. That's currently going to county board here in October. We, as far as how that impacts or who to contact, I would say, the executive committee, county board chair, county manager, they're the ones that have been facilitating that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
As a staff person, department head, we've been asked for ideas many months ago to put towards that, and I put on my conservation hat and advocated for private wells, which we talked in a previous hour here. That might not be an eligible practice, but at this point in time, it's really not in the control of like my immediate oversight committee, the PRD committee. It seems to be working, I think, from the bottom going towards the top, but the top is kind of where those decisions are made as to how to, and really my understanding is the way it came down to for the 2022 county budget was we were in dire need, and it appears that we've taken advantage of ARPA funds to keep the county afloat on certain programs. So yeah, I think there needs to be more conversation and more discussion about what other projects or programs could be eligible. I don't know that we've looked at all those options other than the brick and mortar. I know capital items have been kind of the suggested.
Yeah.
So for example, if we're short on staff to implement programs, the county doesn't want to stick ARPA funds into that because ARPA is really a one-time funding mechanism, and to fund staff that can't be funded in the future, they're shying away from that. So they want to focus on capital items. So if we can, if you can describe certain programs as capital, economics, I think what Julie you're talking about might be maybe more of a CR&T committee, community resources, tourism, economic development discussion. But I do know members of my oversight committee, the PRD committee, are on that other committee as well, and do have a shared interest in this sort of thing. So.
And I know too, just for the ARPA funds, I do know that, you know, like if the county lost a lot of money during the pandemic for services and stuff like that, and that's probably another reason they're putting it into their budget, because they lost a lot of money coming in because of the pandemic. I do know that next year, June or July, they'll be getting the second half of it. So this might be something we need to work on for the second half of it, if they've already targeted the first half of the funds. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind.
Well, we're trying to send local government officials to any trainings that they can get their hands on to help them understand ARPA and how it can be utilized. And then also, I mean, we are pushing for our issues, right, around conservation and agriculture, infrastructure development, broadband, all the things that we care about. We're trying to, you know, and to see what it might be available to the local, to county governments that could help build infrastructure and the, you know, towards the issues that we desire, right? And it just seems like there needs to be good public participation in this as well. And we don't want to squander any money, right? And so it is really important to get local government officials aware and engaged.
Julie, on that.
Well, here comes Tara. Tara is our watershed coordinator, working with farmers. Thanks, Tara. I wasn't sure if you were going to join or not, but I appreciate it. So let me just stop and introduce Tara. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm very sorry I'm late. I got caught up on a phone call with a farmer, so I apologize. I am the watershed coordinator for 4 different watershed councils here in Western Wisconsin, most applicably to Dunn County, the Hay River Watershed or Farmer-Led Watershed Council. And we work with the farmers on implementing conservation practices to reduce their nitrogen and phosphorus, mostly inputs and sedimentation, onto the landscape.
Great.
Yeah, thanks
Julie, can I follow? Oh, sorry. I'll wait, Steve, until you're through.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Tara. But I wanted to pick up on a comment that Julie just made about, I'll paraphrase it, Julie, you were saying, we're trying to get local Dunn County officials to learn as much as they can about, you call it ARPA. What does the last A stand for?
American Rescue Plan Act, right?
Act, I think. Yeah, I think it's
But
act.
you were stressing that is very important for we local people to know more. And I guess in a way, each of us, we're volunteers for HEAT, but we're also citizens. You said for citizens to know more. Could you kind of keep us informed? Are these like Zoom meetings that are held?
Not really. You're gonna have to go hunt and find this stuff. Often it's coming fast. Our government relations team is trying to keep on top of it. I'm also a member of several rural organizer groups across the nation, and they're feeding me information. So these links that I shared for you, for example, are some that we found in Wisconsin, as well as some that we have found nationally to help guide rural communities. And what often happens is when government grant programs are made available or government acts happen, rural community governments aren't prepared to be able to really seize those funds. You may not have like full-time grant writers or people out doing, you know, watching the Federal Register and everything like that. And so sometimes they're left out because the access is difficult. And so in this case, this is a real pretty direct line of money. And we just want people to really be prepared locally to speak for what they want, right? And I've even thought about, like, with Tara's work, I mean, what do farmers need from the county in order to be able to plant more cover crops? Could the county buy some highboy planters or something like that to be able to lease or rent out to farmers in the area?
Can I follow up on that point that you're making now and the points you were making before? How do we prioritize? You know, because maybe that planter is exactly, you know, the priority. You know, Chase mentioned that when we listened to the movie. You know, I hear a lot about trying to encourage more butchers to come in, so our local beef, lamb and hog producers need more butchers. They have to sign up a year, sometimes a year and a half ahead of time. So is that the priority? Is the priority local in trying to get a buy local campaign to get the information you just gave us that I had not heard about the amount of return for what we do for $5 a week? I think that's a powerful message. So what do we prioritize, and how do we get that priority so we can have a strong voice from our number of people? We're going to be having a collaboration meeting amongst a number of groups. We could get the word out that this is what we're working on, priorities. Let's talk about what the priority is. So when we go to Chairman Bartlett of the county, we can say this matters, and it matters to a lot of people. What's the process that we can do that? Because unless we can unify, we're all going to come up with our own little silo of what we see as important.
Yeah, this is where you got to have like the whole network kind of built to be able to pounce on these things when they really come around, right? There are other groups, I mean, and other organizations. You could have a sign-on letter just with the people that you have right here in this group. If you identify a couple of priorities and get a sign-on letter and get it out to your local county electeds as soon as possible. I mean, I think you have to act quick, so you got to work with what you have and find something that is probably going to be somewhat politically appetizing as well. So I wouldn't go with something like a living wage for Dunn County, probably not going to get a lot of traction, but highboy planters that will help keep the water less green than it is, maybe so. Sorry.
Yeah, and I need to say something too, because I noticed, you know, because I'm a town official, so I'm kind of all in all this too. The county, like Eau Claire County, they had public meetings on these ARPA funds. They welcomed public input. Dunn County doesn't do anything like that. Nobody has any idea about these. I'm serious. Nobody knows anything about these funds except the town boards that received it, villages, cities, and the county. Okay, no citizens know about it. You know, we've had on our agenda a discussion on ARPA funds and how to use them and stuff like that, but we didn't have like a public meeting, but no one showed up at that meeting. But all I'm saying is, you know, maybe that's something that we need to do is get the word out there, because they've already used half of these funds. They've already delegated what half of these funds are. They're going to start working on their next year. They're going to start working on the 2023 agenda in the beginning of 2022. That's just how it is. All the different departments have to have their proposed budgets in by what, May, Chase? I think it's May or June, May.
Yeah, June, I think, is when I had to have my first one in, so.
Yeah, okay, so you're talking all of these different committees and departments within the county are all going to be starting to work on their budgets in January, because they have to have them in by May. So if we want any of these other funds used, you're gonna have to do something. And then another thing I heard was that there was a discussion on helping towns get broadband in, because that's one of the main things. And the consent, I heard a lot of a specific group of county board members were against that because they did not want any private businesses to get any of those ARPA funds. Because when you work with, I'm just telling you, because in order for us to apply for the PSC grants and all that other stuff on broadband, we need to partner with a private broadband firm. And then all the grants and everything get, submitted to that. And we've already, most of the towns in Dunn County have already put almost 100% of their ARPA funds towards broadband. Like in our case, we have 550 people in our town that do not have fiber. So we have partnered with 24/7 in order to, get that service out to the balance of our rural areas, which is wonderful. But in discussions with the county, supposedly, like I said, this is what I've heard, but from a pretty reliable source, that they didn't want to put any of these ARPA funds towards, helping any of the towns or villages or cities get that, because it's a more of a local thing. It's not a county thing. So I don't know. So that's just, I'm just thinking we might run into some walls there. But if anything, we definitely would need to start working on this now if we want to get any of those funds. And I think maybe we could try to get together with farmers and let them know about this kind of thing. And then, have that kind of a front with the county to get them and, the county to listen to the farmers and, stuff that they need.
Julie, what is farmers, I bet you're working with the farmers in terms of getting some of this information out there. What are you hearing from the farmers, and what kind of publicity has gone out about the ARPA funds and their access to it? For Tara or Julie, I don't know.
Yeah, well, we really can campaign based on what our members tell us is important through policy. And so obviously broadband is a big one, meat processing, and there are meat processing funds coming both federal and statewide. So we lobbied the governor really hard on meat processing last year, and we were successful and with other groups in getting, some state money set aside for developing local meat processing infrastructure. And that money, I don't know, 20 million or so will be coming through the state as well. So I think they're even using some ARPA funds to trickle down and help build that. So we're using existing policy, but we haven't even been able to really ignite our members because we're still tracking this stuff as well. So we're trying to we have a lot of actually members who were elected officials. And so we're trying to get that group together soon and notify them of what these resources, where they're going. But you're right, Cheryl, there are some counties that are holding public participation forums to ask how the citizens want the money to be used. And there are other counties that are operating pretty much in committees or through departments and not really involving the public in this. So it's a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
I would just add that I work with a slightly different group of farmers because my groups of councils aren't just farmers union members. So they come from a broader political spectrum probably, and more of the corn and soybean kind of farmers. And I would say that they feel very constrained in the current model, that they don't see any markets aside from corn, soybeans, and alfalfa if they have their own cattle. And with fewer and fewer cattle, with the dairy industry the way it is and meat processing the way it looks, that is making the perennial crop of alfalfa significantly challenged. So I have talked to farmers and they would love to be growing more small grains, but most of them have been burned by the small grains market of wheat or even something stranger because they have trouble marketing it. And it would be very interesting, I think, and very palatable to everybody, I think, in terms of policy to do economic development around creating a more diverse crop marketing locally that they could actually use. So Chase would have other thoughts on this, but we know that our sheep folks are having trouble processing their wool because it's hard to market. So if we had a local fiber shed movement that was able to expand that, or a local producer, not just a mill that would be able to mill wheat or other small grains, but also a company that was going to actually work and do end stage products on small grains. That would be really palatable to our large scale farmers because they could significantly row crop that on large acres. And it would be a really good economic development incentive that I can see benefiting lots of folks and being very palatable to local food movement folks as well.
Chase could probably speak to this, but I know when they just recently hired the zoning person for Dunn County, they added economic development on to her list of the things that she can do in her spare time.
Yeah.
So I don't, do you have information that we can go to her? Because when they were talking, the PR&D committee talked about adding this economic development, shtick to the zoning person. And when I listened to their conversations, it all sounded like the old school kind of economic development. And you wanted to yell, which you can't do to these meetings. Hey, what about farmers, diversity, economic development for farmers? And do you have some kind of information about that we can go to PR&D and go to the zoning director and send her and say, this is important? And I know other people probably already are, but I think that is one thing where we could talk about the importance of that for Dunn County.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that, Kathy. I think right now with Ann, the new zoning administrator, being fairly new, and this additional role being tacked onto that position, I'm not sure that she even knows what that entails right now, unfortunately. My understanding at the time was it was more of a point of contact for economic development, not necessarily doing economic development programming or tasks. That was still going to be relied upon for the, which I'm still learning, Dunn County Economic Development Group, which I know, my understanding is may have received less contribution in funds from the county. I think partly due to it maybe being the old school mentality of economic development, and thinking maybe there's opportunities for different ways to grow the economy, more or less in lines of what Tara, you mentioned, Julie, you've mentioned, Kathy, you've mentioned. I think there is some work that's being done there, but I can't speak to the details of it right now. I think, and I'm sure Ann is, just as much as I still am, trying to drink from that fire hose and understand all these different things that are going on, and probably haven't really settled in enough to know what role we can play and or how we can play it. And unfortunately, we're not prepared for that at this current moment.
I just want to say another thing, is I used to work with Eric Turner before he passed away with the Economic Development Corporation at the county when we were working on broadband and trying to bring broadband in years ago. And the main thing, it seems that they're concentrating on, because we couldn't get any help from the county at that time either, locally. So, but they're concentrating on more of the what do they call them? The tech parks and
traditional, yeah.
yeah, like that kind of a thing.
Industrial
So,
parks.
yeah, industrial parks and that kind of stuff over there, especially along County Road B and everything, where they're doing all those spec buildings and stuff like that. So, I mean, I just wanted to mention that that was my experience with the Dunn County Economic Department, Development Department, but I don't know if they have a specific area just for environmental or for farmers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I would agree, Cheryl. I think that's kind of the thought, and what I've heard since I've been here is that it's how do we develop more businesses and not maybe helping assist current businesses to grow too.
Yeah.
So do we have material that about the advantage of helping farmers and what we can do to help farmers, and develop a program that we can go to kind of try to broaden that whole perspective, and as new as Ann is, but make sure that she's hearing that. and getting to the, to the economic development group. And even though there's not much money, just to kind of stretch that old school look, and maybe it's already stretched and I don't know it, but I haven't heard it. But I guess what I'm looking for is material, bullet points or material that may already exist rather than having to create it.
I mean, I think Julie already alluded to it before I arrived, but Ken Meter's work is very, very complete and holistic in the way that local food stuff can benefit an economy. However, I have not seen that traditionally aimed at the large scale farms or row crop farmers. That's more of your CSA's vegetable farms. And in what I've seen of him, I certainly haven't read all of his work. I don't know of, I mean, we can certainly provide anecdotes of folks in Dunn County who have been burnt by small grains before and what the benefits there would be. But I don't have any resources that I'm aware of. I would guess that something exists with a lot of Googling, maybe.
Yeah, we would have to really hunt some of that down for sure, but there are some local grain collaboratives and things like that in Minnesota and others. I work with like a group of women in agriculture leadership, and they might be able to help me find those kinds of things. But I mean, there is some research to show if you can keep more farmers on the land and prevent consolidation from happening, you're going to have healthier rural communities. And so I mean, and I think there is an evolution in our thinking about economic development. Not all economic development corporations think like big box and let's give TIF, discounts and everything for Walmart to come in. And you're starting to kind of see some evolution in that thinking, even among like Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. And we do have an office for rural prosperity now. I don't know if you know that, but we've been working with them and holding some meetings with them to talk about like ways to try to get some of these dollars to come to support, independent farmers, whether they're big or small, right? But support independent farmers on the land. So you might connect with like Keitra Olson or somebody else in the Office of Rural Prosperity. That might be a really good thing for this group to do, or to recommend a joint conversation with your new economic development director and that office. And they're new too, so they're like Chase and and I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming at them at once, but that's a good reason to get in and get to know them and build a partnership early on.
Good point. Excellent point.
Yeah.
Back to Steve Hogseth's point. If you see, I know you have a few other projects you're working on, but if you see ways, and I know Tara, and I've talked with Tara in the past, she's saying one of the ways that we could make connections with farmers is to make sure we go out to their grazing days or their events that they have on their farms, so that we can have more of a communication with them. But if you see other ways that we should be staying up to date on what's happening, because if you two are working, you two are employed to be doing this kind of thing. We who are volunteers are going to have far fewer, and it's not that we're not willing to dig some, but any help, like Steve Hogseth said, that you can help with resources, that would be great.
And another thing too is if we could get some of these really, really rural town boards involved too, maybe like the town board chairs or something like that. They might have a little bit more say too, with them, like the Economic Development Corporation, because then you're talking specific areas of Dunn County and stuff too. So that's just a thought also.
Mm-hmm.
On that same point, like Kathy just mentioned, or maybe it was Tara, about getting involved with some of these smaller community events that we could become more informed about the farmers, their issues and their needs. A lot of these things are just, again, from a citizen standpoint, they can be very interesting and they can be very helpful. And you go out and you rub elbows and you're just talking with some guy who happens to be a small farmer, and in that conversation, you build a little trust and he feels that you're a little interested and we're not coming at them from a standpoint of a formal group. Not that he is a formal group, we're volunteers, but just for us to become more aware in these different funds that you were talking about, Julie, how do we learn about these different programs? There seems to be, and I don't mean this negatively, but there seems to be a little bit of a helter-skelter sort of, you catch what catch can and you don't, it's not as organized as we would all like it to be, but the more we can have organization to this and more focal points, the better off we will be. When I say we, I'm talking about we Dunn County and we the farmers and we conservationists.
Yeah.
It's all about taking care of the land. We talk a lot about economy, we talk about, and in a lot of ways, economy, I look at that word as for the immediate needs, well, how many dollars am I going to make this quarter or this next year? And we look at it from more of a what's in front of us at the moment, as opposed to the economy of having a generational healthy environment. And a lot of people have difficulty looking at it that way. They look at it from the immediacy. So I'm not sure what I'm saying, but boy, the more we can kind of know what the opportunities are for each of us to learn. And again, each of us is citizenry, the better off we're going to be as a community.
Yeah.
I don't know, in Farmers Union, is there any effort to maybe help draw that focus in a little bit more, to educate us all a little bit more, not just in Dunn County, but all of Wisconsin? I kind of rambled there, but.
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, through whether building cooperatives or doing educational programs or, lobbying, all right? We're trying, but you're right, Steve, there's a haphazard right now. Lindsay, I know you were looking to say something there.
Yeah, no, I just think, it's interesting because I was just popping onto the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation site. And I want to support farmers, and I agree. I think there's a niche there, but I also feel that when you're looking at workforce development, they say the three most important things that why people want to stay in a community and work in the community. Welcomeness, is the community welcoming? Are there social offerings and community aesthetics? Now, the community aesthetics is really the natural resources, having trails, being able to hike. Sorry, we've got this green pea lake out here, which is not very community aesthetic. And if the water quality would be better in Lake Monona, I think it would, this whole region would be much more stronger. So to me, I think maybe that's an area where we at Dunn can hit our interactions or interconnections with economic development are around those community aesthetics. And then the social offerings are the farmers markets, are the ability to buy from a CSA and connect with your local efforts. So instead of us trying to figure out how to help farmers be more profitable, I think there's lots of people working on that. This could be our niche to go after Dunn County and us as whatever our group is called, I forget, HEAT, that this is a role we want to play because we know this is going to be the backbone of creating economic prosperity in this region is both those social offerings and the community aesthetics. Now, I will also tell you, though, this is not the most welcoming region. So I'll just, as a newbie being here for 3 years, you guys got a little bit of work to do on that. But anyway, I digress.
I agree. Could I ask, I'm sorry for darting from topic to topic. I apologize for this. But, going back to the money that you were talking about that went to the state to help butchering or the meat processing.
Yeah.
How do we follow the money? How do we know how that money is being spent? So we know that that's out there now, and is it, so follow, getting a program and then follow the money, and so that we can be going and targeting the people who are going to be able to get a hold of that money. I've heard
It'll come through DAT I mean, most likely the money will, thanks, Cheryl. The money will go through DAT and be distributed that way, and it will be publicly funded. So, I mean, there is a way to track the money. Our concern is just really trying to make sure that smaller meat processing organizations know about this and are able to like pull together, because otherwise it's we don't want it just to benefit the big four, right, that are controlling the meat industry, of course, right now. But it does sound like it was going to be targeted towards expansion and growth of like existing groups. Like, so if Sailor's Meat, right, wants to expand by getting another cooler or additional, wants to up their ante in terms of animals processed, they might be able to apply for this grant. Our concern is if you're trying to operate your own small business, how are you going to be able to find the time to write a grant, to get the funds? It's very similar to the challenge that local, small, especially small rural municipalities. It's the same kind of problem, the capacity to be able to do it.
Right. So then all the wealthy communities get all the money.
Yeah, we're trying to stay on top of it as much as we can. And in these national conversations that I'm in, this is like one of the #1 concerns, is that access point for rural communities. So I know that there's different language in there than there has been in some of the past, and of course this is a giant package, right? Both of these are phenomenal in terms of government expenditures that could benefit local communities. So it's tough. I don't know, Catherine, I mean, but I do know that the language, there's more thought, I think, in this than I've seen in previous legislative packages.
So what I'm hearing you say is the stumbling block is grant writing for the small local producer. So one of the things that can happen is having a grant writer available to small producers.
Grant writers and having these like food systems people like Tara's talking about, like, try to connect the dots between the grain producers and the market, and then the processing, and getting getting that supply chain, communicating with one another. Those are the challenges. And I find it terribly vexing how difficult that is. Mm-hmm. But if we can get these, like the Sailor's Meats and similar groups like that, get them at least in the pipeline of information. I mean, there may be also economic development people at the Office for Rural Prosperity that might be able to help, or Farmers Union can kick in a grant writer,
That's part of that that and I'm stealing Lindsay's mantra. How do we get us, to collaborate, to be able to work together? And I'm not ignoring Lindsay's point about trying to make this a socially interesting place. But, I wonder if that's part of it. Part of it being attracted to small people, if they know they have grant writers here, and they know that there's a real network there, economic network, plus a bunch of friendly people are willing to try to help you to go. Because, I think you're right when I'm targeting a little more focus than Lindsay, I think your point was, but.
No, and I mean, I'm also like we did this thing with the Devil's Brew with the local brewery, and we wanted to get local wheat in there, I think, grains. What is that volume? I guess I went to beer first, maybe that was bad, but I'm just trying to think of some of those value-added products that we have processors that produce things in this county, right? And then what's that volume that they need to come from? And then obviously you need some, I'm sure it needs to have some processing from field before it's ready to be turned into beer or some other products. And then I'm thinking about the co-op. You know, Rex Remington works for me. He's got the co-op just merged with the Eau Claire Co-op. You know, are they a potential player in providing a market for some of this effort? Possibly. I mean, I'd be all over trying to build that network, but I just don't know some of the volumes. And could this be a capstone project, maybe for a student at Stout to really delve deep into grain and then markets? I think this community is ripe for the consumption of the products, because I think there's a nice cultural buy local feel to this community. It's got a nice vibe. So then it's really that infrastructure piece, I think. But I'm simplifying something that's very complex. But that's where I went. You know, maybe there's some networks there that we could help pull together. And then we'll all be drinking the whatever beer next year, and it'll be the small producer, whatever.
I would, you know, if I were all of you, I would talk to your, like, whoever your county elected supervisor is right now, and just ask them, what do you know about ARPA funds? You know, and ask them if you can have some sort of a community dialogue about this next $4 million that is coming down, and then collaborate with the local Dunn County Farmers Union chapter, and maybe some of Tara's farmers too have interest in, you know, seeing how their especially regenerative agriculture kinds of practices, or building, you know, stronger soil and things like that, how we might promote that through connecting some of the dots on the ARPA funds. But I would talk with the County Board of Supervisors and say, we got to have some public dialogue on this, you know? So.
Yeah.
And then we can orchestrate behind the scenes to have the right kind of public dialogue.
And I'm trying to tap into these funds for something completely different in Bayfield, right? It's an old bus barn that we're trying to buy and then turn into green. So it's a total lines up 100% with everything. And we can't get anyone in Bayfield to really tell us how to tap into these monies. And my biggest worry is we're going to spend $3 billion and it's all going to go for nothing in 5 years nationwide. That's my biggest worry. I think that's where you guys are at too.
So Julie, on your suggestion to have, you know, tap in with somebody on the county board as to these ARPA funds, or the ARPA funds, do you have a name, a specific name, as opposed to just the county board? Is there a kind of a key person who we might want to talk? And what I'm thinking of is, I wonder if that might be a potential for one of our future heat meetings, is to have some dialogue with a person like that. I don't know if I'm getting off the agenda here a little bit, but do you have any names particularly?
Well, I'm looking up who your current county board members are. I haven't lived there for a little while, Steve, so I don't know who's your county board chair right now.
Dave Bartlett. Dave Bartlett.
Do any of you have a relationship with him?
I talked to him, you know, somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just give him a call and say, you know, the heat group and the Dunn County or the Farmers Union are talking about how we might be able to use some of the ARPA funds in order to help support small business and small farms, and in an environmentally conscious way. And we'd like, you know, to see if we might be able to have some community sessions and be able to bring up some of the dialogue around how to use this money. I mean, he should at least be open, have an open ear to that as an elected official. And if you have a personal relationship at all, that will help.
I agree, but I also liked your point about going to your individual supervisor. I know ours is a farmer, and he's on the PR&D meeting committee, and you know, and there's a meeting tonight, and I will talk with them about that in the public comments.
Yeah, I mean, just you're probably overrepresented by the farming community, as is most rural communities. So
we are.
You know, trying to talk about ways that we can help, increase profitability for farmers and keep them on the land, but also do, you know that you've got this environmental awareness out there. So talk about it in ways that you think that you can bring together common interests and get ARPA money to help support all of the above. Yeah.
Julie, I could just hug you, because you've got so many, you and Tara have so many good ideas. Because one of the things, and in the supervisor that supervisor for my area is a farmer, and I think he sees people in conservation as being anti-farmer. And, going to them and saying, now we've got these funds, let's talk about economic development for ag, so that we can maybe, if nothing else comes out of it, they can hear with their ears, there's a bridge between what we're wanting in conservation and what farmers are wanting. And how can we do that? Julie, I think you're really onto something hot. If we each contacted our county supervisor, to start that dialogue. Yeah. Good idea.
We like to think of ourselves as kind of the interface between environmentalism and agriculture. Tara's like living and breathing it, but go ahead, Tara. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I was just going to say, if you're all going to do that contacting of the board, which I think would be great, it maybe would behoove everybody to be on this exactly the same page, or even have a motion or a very specific ask available. I'm looking at your county board, and I mean, Tom Quinn's on there. Of course, he's going to be behind you. John Calabrese should be just in lockstep with what you guys are thinking about. And I see a few other names here that I think will be very supportive. But if you can go into the meeting with 4 or 5 of them already behind a very specific ask, it's going to make that a county board meeting go more efficiently and really give you direction and a little more purpose, I think.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And you do have some friendly faces, so we could even have some conversations behind the scenes too, to see what their thoughts are about like what's going to have some political traction. They know their county board of supervisors that they sit by at those meetings. So, but I think Catherine, you make such a good point though about being farmer friendly in your approach here. And our farmers, especially the kind of folks that Tara works with, feel like they are under attack all the time.
They will. I've heard more than one in the past week say they have a target on their back. So they definitely feel very defensive about anything.
I was wondering if I could go back up about 10 minutes ago, 15, we were talking about, it's kind of going back to an older topic, that I got a sense that there is a need for grant writing. Is that a true statement?
I don't know about Dunn County's case in particular. We do offer our members we have a fellow that we employ that will help give people advice on grant writing. He won't write the grant for you, but he will help you piece together the parts and what you might need. I don't know about Dunn County. Chase, do you have to write your own grants? Probably so. Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I first of all, I'm not volunteering to be a grant writer, but I think I could. I think I could probably make a good stab at writing a grant, but I would then need somebody, maybe I do 80% of it, and then I get a little coaching. And they say, well, here, change this a little bit or whatever. But I think there's maybe a potential for a lot of people to, if they're willing to volunteer doing something like grant writing.
And I'm not even sure that you need to write a grant for the ARPA money. I think it needs to be, marked in the budget.
Yeah, I'm talking about writing a grant for any money, for anything.
Yeah.
And, but I just wonder if there's a potential there for seeking out volunteers, people that have a good sense of connecting the dots, if you will.
Yeah.
Using appropriate wording. And I think there's probably a skill set within the community that could do something like that. And that's just more of a comment and a little food for thought. But
and back to the point about a collaborative message, maybe at our next business meeting, we could all talk about what our message would be to our supervisors so that we're together on that. I know we have a bunch of stuff. We'll be wrapping up what happened with our collaborative meeting with the conservation groups, but we could maybe add that to our agenda.
Well, I see that we're at 1 o'clock and we said this would be noon till 1, and so we don't want to take anybody over, but if is there any burning comment that somebody would like to make before we sign off on any of the discussion we've had?
Just real quick, so tonight is then our is it Zoom meeting, Kathy, for tonight's call with the Dunn County supervisors, or is it in person?
It's a town meeting. It's not,
Okay.
it's just our town meeting. Our county supervisor is also on the town board. So.
Oh, I see. Okay, I got confused. I thought it was the county meeting. I was going to pop over later.
Yeah,
And the only thing
sorry about that.
The only thing I would share, Steve, is our investigation into these funds was you had to show what's new for us as grant writers is the impact that COVID has had on your community. Apparently that is a lens. I don't know, Julie, but this is what I was told through the couple of economic development people that I've chatted with, that you have to show harm from COVID, and they're using that degree of pain from COVID to help with that decision around who gets funding and who doesn't. So in our case, it's hard because I don't think Bayfield has been hit as hard as some other communities in Wisconsin. And I think for us, that's just hard for us to understand. I think that's more of a health frame that we're just not used to using in general. So anyway, I totally got us off topic, but so I think that's the actual grant writing isn't as difficult. It's finding the damn research on the impact of COVID. So you might want to do that for us, Steve. Anyway, I digress. Keep up the great work as always, everybody.
Well, thank you, Julie and
Yeah,
Tara,
thanks,
for
Julie.
joining us. And
Yep.
this was a
Thank
good
you.
discussion. And I need to say before we sign off that when we discussed, we had during one of our meetings, we had a discussion on farmers and how can we help the farmers better. And we had the whole farming community and we talked about all kinds of niches. And what it boiled down to is we could get the biggest bang for the buck by talking with Farmers Union. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks. Well, we really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And you could always call me, outside of a meeting or whatever, if you wanted to develop some talking points or even a connection with the Dunn County Farmers Union. I think there'd be a natural ally for you all because you've got the shared values, right? So.
And seeing that Chase and Tara and Julie are on this call, I am going to call the three of you regarding our collaboration meeting that Julie may not be aware of, but I know Chase and Tara are. And I have some questions for each of you because we are going to try and schedule a best date at a meeting tomorrow. So I'd like to talk with you offline on that. So I'll give you a call, hopefully in the next hour. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Good to see you all again.
Thank you. Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
I apologize for being late again. Have a good day.
Oh, no, you're wonderful. Anytime you can share with us, we love it. Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Bye.
Bye-bye.